Showtime.
It's the pre-party with J. Cal.
We are professional wrestling.
I'm building an
alliance.
You are tuned into
the absolute top of the mountain, the ultimate professional wrestling.
Alliance-wrestling.com.
Welcome to the pre-party, a presentation of Alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. My name is JCal, and every Tuesday at this time, that's 5:05 Eastern, 2:05 Pacific. Oh, I threw it back old school at the TBS 5-minute slot, huh? Hey, every week we do this pre-party to get you hyped up for what's coming on NWA Power. And I am pumped up for this week because, well, there's a lot of reasons, right? There's a lot of reasons to get fired up. First and foremost, we are finally getting our television title match. We're getting the Pope, Elijah Burke, defending one of the sweetest titles on the planet, that TV title, against Fred Rosser, Mr. No Days Off. If you're not excited about that match, guys, I don't know what to tell you, man. Check that pulse, because you're probably not alive. Let's be honest. This is probably the most exciting match at the NWA setup since this rebirth, since this, the Phoenix, if you will. And I think it's really, really cool that the NWA is going and giving us this match so early on. We're season 4 of NWA Power, and we're still getting these good matchups. You know, in fact, I think this might be the best matchup that they've put on Power since Jack Stane versus Tim Storm at Superpower. I'm really pumped up about it, if you can't tell. Plus, there's new additions to the tag team roster. New additions to the tag team roster. I mean, there wasn't even a tag team roster a week ago. We had 2 guys. We had, you know, JR Kratos, and we had Aaron Stevens, and that was our tag team division. That was it. And all of a sudden, now we've got 2 new tag teams, and actually technically more than 2 new ones, but we're going to get into that in just a minute too. Also, Nick Aldis has promised some news regarding Strictly Business. Now, the last time they announced some news regarding Strictly Business, we saw the addition of Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner to that group, that organization, that stable, that trifecta. And we'll see if that happens today too. But we'll also talk about that in a minute. I wanted to start this week's show off with a little obscurity, a little bit of NWA trivia for you, a little bit of je ne sais quoi. I don't know. I just think it's fun stuff to talk about. Now, the NWA, as you know, has been around since 1948. But in the year 2000, there was a gentleman by the name of Nathan Jones. You might remember him from his short-lived time in the WWE, but Nathan Jones, I have it right here, unsuccessfully challenged Shinya Hashimoto on January 6th, 2002 in the Korakuen Hall in Tokyo, Japan for the 10 pounds of gold. Again, I said he unsuccessfully challenged for that title. Which is interesting, though, because as a part of the 0-1 roster, he and John Heidenreich, who also would end up in the WWE, were a tag team. They competed in UPW, Ultimate Pro Wrestling, here in Southern California, but also in 0-1, which was affiliated with the National Wrestling Alliance, and that's where they won the International NWA Tag Team titles. They won those titles by defeating... Actually, this is kind of funny. They defeated the Predator and Jimmy Snuka Jr. It's kind of an odd pairing. Another accomplishment in the hat of Nathan Jones is he won the WWA World Heavyweight Championship by defeating... Oh, I lost my note here. Who did he defeat? Sorry, I'm all messed up now. He defeated Jeff Jarrett to win that title. Is that right? Nope. Well, okay, now I'm getting all mixed up on my notes here, so I'm just going to get to the point. Nathan Jones would later also challenge Jeff Jarrett for the 10 pounds of gold. And so I think it's kind of fitting that somebody who challenged for the 10 pounds of gold I'd be talking about right now, I know it's obscure, But on April 23rd, Nathan Jones will be in the movie Mortal Kombat. And I just thought it was kind of neat. So I was really just stalling to make sure that more of you got here. Yeah, that's what we'll go with. I love obscure trivia, and I love obscure wrestling facts. Nathan Jones, formerly of Pro Wrestling 01, and also the WWE, had twice challenged for the 10 pounds of gold, once against Shinya Hashimoto and the other against Jeff Jarrett. And I just thought it'd be fun to talk about that. And that will segue into us talking about another tag team that I'm very excited to see make their debut tonight on Power. And I'm talking about the tag team of Crimson. I'm talking about the tag team of Jack Stane. I'm talking about the War Kings, who we saw at Crockett Cup 2019. They were the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing. They got eliminated in the first round by the wild card. You see there Royce Isaacs and Tom Latimer. But as you can see, they weren't outmatched power-wise by those two. We also saw them at the 70th anniversary show, taking on Crazy Steve and I just started reading some of your comments, and then that happened. That wasn't supposed to happen. Camera issues, great. So yeah, I just wanted to point out that my favorite tag team re-debuting for the National Wrestling Alliance tonight on Power. You know, I don't know why not everybody is talking about this tag team, the War Kings. Again, I think had it not been for the injury that Crimson received shortly before the beginning of NWA Power, that the War Kings would have been a much, much more celebrated tag team. We would have probably seen a feud between them and the Wild Cards. And I'm just excited because, number one, you guys, I shared this on the This Is Pro Wrestling Discord page today. We had Jack Stane is a former NWA national champion. He briefly unified the North American title for the and the national title. He's a former World's Heavyweight Champion. He won the tag titles with Rob Conway, another former World's Heavyweight Champion. They defended those titles in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Jack Stane is every bit of NWA as you would say Tim Storm is every bit as Nick Aldis is. And his legacy is pretty much unmatched because very few people have been able to defend an NWA title in Japan, New Japan specifically. And I would love nothing more than Jack Stane and Crimson to get an opportunity to face Aaron Stevens and J.R. Kratos and bring those tag team titles back to where they belong, to the Grand Slam champion, as Chris Drummond would say. And that's exciting to me, guys, because my biggest complaint about this show, about this roster, was there was a lack of tag teams, and that was a problem that carried over from the first few seasons of NWA Power. They didn't have any really solid tag teams. In fact, the Wild Cards were a team that were just thrown together to be a tag team. Now, they ended up gelling really well, and Royce Isaacs and Tom Latimer were actually really, really good as a tag team. But besides them, the only other real dominant tag team, I mean, you had the Rock and Roll Express, and then later you would have Eli Drake and James Storm, who again were just two guys thrown together. They did a great job as a tag team, but they weren't really a tag team. I mean, they are, but they weren't really. But let's go to some of your comments. I didn't get to say hi to everyone when I popped in, so I will say hi now to what's up to Dave Scooby and Lamb. Doty's in the house. Phil, Talking Sports, is here. Fiona's here. Fiona's our friend from Scotland. I was supposed to go to Scotland last year. Thanks, COVID. Terry McDermott's in the house. Woodland Goblin's here. Big Chris Dog. DKM's in the house. Sean Mega's here. So, yeah, I see you guys are all here. A lot of you are excited about Jack Stane returning to Power. And I think it's such a good move. It makes so much sense. It checks off so many boxes. The NWA was looking for heavyweights. They want to look different than AEW. They want to look different than Impact Wrestling. And let's be honest, right? When you start talking about the big tag teams out there, I mean, who's bigger than Jack Stane and Crimson, really? I mean, Carl Anderson and Gallows, I mean, maybe. That's about it, right? There's very few people are that able to reach that caliber. I did see what you guys said. What Chris Dog said. It's cute that NWA Twitter is talking about Andrade. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name, guys. Yeah, he is a former NWA welterweight champion, and it's kind of funny that he is celebrating that title and its legacy and its meaningfulness now that he's outside of the WWE. And like Big Chris said, I was quick to notice that the NWA made comment of that, specifically Nick Aldis saying, then you were a welterweight, but now you're a heavyweight, and the NWA is open for business. Now, this could just be posturing, right? This could just be playing off the fact that the NWA, that title, the 10 pounds of gold, has a cousin that lives in Mexico as the welterweight championship. It looks almost identical to the 10 pounds of gold that CMLL recognizes as the middleweight championship. But it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. I'm not going to hold my breath for him to show up, but I mean, it would be pretty cool if he did. DKM said he's not a heavyweight. You know, I haven't seen him step on the scale. I just know he's bigger now than he was then. Lamb says hi to everyone on YouTube. You all say hi back to Lamb. Phil Talk Sports says Pope is still pimping. You damn betcha he's still pimping. I can't wait to see Pope and Fred Rosser tonight. That is a matchup I think a lot of us are, maybe our expectations are too high, but I feel like out of everyone on the roster, these are the two that can deliver it. When you guys first saw Fred Rosser in the NWA, he was a part of that the three-man the three-man dance for the shot at the TV title. But Fred Rosser's really been getting his business done. When he says no days off, I mean, he genuinely means it. As a member of Primetime Live, he had one of the best win-loss records on the roster. Of course, he defeated James Storm and Chris Adonis in a triple threat match on his first appearance on Primetime Live. He defeated Eric Redbeard in the tournament preliminaries to get into the tournament for the United Wrestling Network World Title. And then, of course, he ended up losing to Mike Bennett, but he had a great couple of matches there. He looked very strong and very good. And speaking of strong, he's also a celebrated roster member of New Japan Strong, where they just introduced their own championship, the New Japan Strong title. And he's over there working with guys like Jordan Clearwater, Chris Dickinson, Rocky Romero. I mean, that roster's growing as well. So seeing somebody like Fred Rosser getting his business done and then now getting an opportunity to showcase himself in the NWA. A lot of you guys who've been following this podcast for a while, we've talked about it. Fred Rosser used to be known as Fred Sampson, and he was actually in the tournament to reclaim the gold when the NWA and Impact Wrestling split. And he won his first round match. I think it was against Glamour Boy Shane, but ended up losing to Brent Albright, who got all the way to the finals. So, I mean, even back then, as a younger wrestler, the NWA showed him a lot of respect. And, of course, he would work matches with Dave Marquez, whether it be in Arizona with the NWA Hollywood shows in Arizona, or also he would work in the NWA NWA Pro Wrestling East, which was the Dave Marquez offshoot on the East Coast. So he did work quite a few matches for the NWA back then. Of course, he got signed by FCW shortly after this time and spent a lot of time in WWE's development, won the tag team titles with Titus, and now he's trying to make a name for himself. And again, these are checking the boxes off of what the NWA has always been looking for. Guys who put in the work, who have established names, but never really got the opportunity that they would have liked. And it looks like the NWA is really getting closer to that. More of your comments. Dodie says, I just realized that Homicide is actually listed as one of the producers along with the others. A sign that he will come back to Power 2. Dodie, I know that Homicide had mentioned that he was going to be retiring at the end of 2020, but he also said that in the beginning of 2020. And, a lot of things changed for a lot of people during the COVID-19 outbreak, and we know that Serena Deeb was all but retired and working in at the Performance Center helping train wrestling talents for the WWE when she was released out of her contract, and now she's the NWA Women's World Championship. So I wouldn't count Homicide out, but I do know that as of now, I think he's looking more for a backstage role with the company. Lamb says Homicide has been a producer since day one of Power. Yeah, he has been. He's been working both as a producer, agent, and from what I understand, that the NWA is actually expanding its front office, and you're going to see a lot more people within the company who will be off camera because they'll be taking care of these roles. And then DKM just said Homicide just signed with Ring. Oh, Sean said that. Sean Mega said he just showed up in Ring of Honor, and DKM also seconded that. So much for that. Doty says that he is looking for heavyweights. Then it's Odin's son, and we'll have heavyweights tag team with Paro. Doty, you're beating me to the punch, and we're getting to these things a lot quicker than I thought we would. But yes, Odinson and Paro will be in tag team action tonight, and they'll be taking on Strictly Business. Well, at least part of Strictly Business. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but we do see them take on Adonis and Tom Latimer tonight, so we'll see what happens there. Woodland Goblin says, I am hoping that after Nick Aldis loses the world title, that he keeps the current oversized world title belt, and that they go back to using the standard size 10 pounds of gold belt. Woodland Goblin, it's interesting because that title has had so many variants over the years. Now, the title that Adam Pearce has hanging over his house was the same title that was used in the initial days of Impact Wrestling. Then he had a title made while he was champion that was a little bit bigger and had a little bit more articulation to it, more red paint on it. It was called it was made by All-Star Championship Belts, and we've affectionately referred to that as the NWA All-Star World Title. But when Bruce Tharp took over, they actually had another belt made by, I think, DKM would know this. I think it's the Leather Republic or something like that. They're based out of the UK, and they did a great job with the title. And I don't know if that title's been changed since. I don't know if it looks any different now, but I'm actually okay with that title. I think it's a good looking belt. So what do you think? JP belts first. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I'm not a belt guy. I know DKM is. I know a lot of you guys out there are really into the title belts. I mean, I just like to look at them. You know what I mean? I don't really keep up with the trends. But like I said, I know the NWA had a lot of variations in the quote unquote wilderness era. So it's interesting to see how those belts have come and gone throughout the years. But I'm perfectly fine with the one that Nick Aldis has. I think it's a good looking title. It bears enough resemblance to the original that you get all the nostalgia when you see it. It doesn't take away from the feelings that I get when I look at it. I'm just reading your guys' comments because you guys, DKM and Woodland Goblin are going on about the belt. And I think it's a good-looking belt. I'll say that. But as we're moving on, so we've talked about it now. 3 new tag teams are being basically showcased tonight on Power. I mean, we don't know exactly who will be stepping in the ring with Jax Dane and Crimson. But I think I know Mims is. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by your comments. So, okay, getting back to the tag team division. Now, we're going to see 3 new tag teams join the roster tonight, in that we're going to see the tag team of the War Kings, Crimson and Jax Dane. We're also going to see the debut of Odinson and Paro. They were known as The End in Evolve Wrestling and in All Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm just going to assume that's what they'll be known as here in NWA Power. Both really solid additions to any tag team roster. Legitimate heavyweights. legitimate tag teams that work with each other all across the country. I'm very excited about these additions. And then we also are knowing that Chris Adonis, the NWA National Champion, the man who just won a belt last week, is going to be teaming with Tom Latimer tonight in a match. They actually square off against the End. So now we have 3 additions to the tag team. What do you guys think about that? Who else would make this tag team better? Don't say the Von Erichs just because the Von Erichs are under contract already, guys. They won't be showing up in the NWA anytime soon. But what unsigned NWA tag team are you looking forward to maybe perhaps joining the NWA? Sean Mega says all these guys should be single wrestlers. And I mean, there's something to that too, right? There's something definitely to that because Tom Latimer, Kevin Douglas's favorite wrestler on the roster, Tom Latimer is, he certainly looked really good against the Pope at Back for the Attack. And I also feel like, Jack Stain, again, is a former Grand Slam champion. He could definitely bring it as a singles competitor, but they're also hurting for a tag team division. So what do you guys think? Do you think that these guys should be separated and used as single competitors? Or do you like the idea of them wrestling as a tag team? Leave your comments below. I see Ryan Romano has a question, and he says, what are your thoughts on a singles champion also being a tag team champion? You know, Ryan, under the right set of circumstances, it doesn't bother me. But I feel like the NWA roster is so thin as it is, I'd actually prefer them to not have as many titles. You know, if the tag team division didn't grow to these additional teams, I could make the case that you don't even need an NWA tag team division. And, I don't know that having a television title and a national title is all that much different. Having 2 separate titles that basically represent the same thing. They're secondary titles. So I don't necessarily know if that's something that I'm thrilled about either. So when I see that your question, should we have one man holding 2 belts, it kind of takes away from the action. It takes away from the wrestling because, they should be focusing on that singles championship or that tag title, whichever it is. So as I see more of your comments, DCAM says we need teams. And what would Luthez do? Says solid committed tag teams outside of big money companies are increasingly rare. You're dead on the money with that one. Toady says bring back the Dawsons. They were heavyweight tag teams and they were local guys. Woodland Goblin says Ole and Arn were NWA National Tag Team Champions while Arn was the NWA TV Champion. I mean, that's very much true, too. Jordan and Cross would make a great babyface tag team. They wouldn't be horrible. Jordan Clearwater, I really like Jordan Clearwater. I'm not sure what their trajectory is with him. I don't know where they see him growing. Matt Cross is a solid talent. He's the only guy on the roster like him. Size, age, speed, agility. I wish there was a cruiserweight division because I feel like Matt Cross will always be just the little guy lost amongst these giant men. And I don't know if he'll ever have an opportunity to be showcased the way he should be. Jordan Lamb says, always depends on the roster. See Ring of Honor. Jonathan Gresham, Dragon Lee, and Tracy Williams. They had 3 guys with double championship runs, which is not good at all. I agree. I just think you need to space things out. The whole idea of having a title is to recognize a talent pool, right? If you look at pro wrestling at its base, at its core, you're supposed to have a title to represent a division. There should be probably at least 5 to 6 challengers in each division. So your world's heavyweight champion should have 5 legitimate challengers to that title at any given moment. Same thing with the tag team division, the national title, the television title, the tag titles, I think I said that already, and so on and so forth. With a roster as small as it is, you have this overwhelming amount of championship belts that you just don't need. There's 1 hour of television a week, 1 hour tapings. are you supposed to showcase 2 or 3 championships per show? That seems like overkill and makes the belt seem a lot less important. All right, more of your comments. Terry McDermott says someone needs to be in a tag team. Not everyone can be strictly singles. That's fair. DKM says because no one wants to book a team, try the money. I think you mean save the money. Woodland Goblin says he loved the Dawsons and he misses them. You might be the only one that loved the Dawsons. I thought they were okay at best. I mean, they weren't really, they didn't do a whole lot for me. They weren't intimidating. They weren't power. I mean, they were big, sure. They were massive, sure. But, I mean, I just didn't feel it from them. Oh, what would Luthez love them as well, so. Another division with such a small roster, no thanks. Doty's putting it down. Excuse me, that was Lamb. Doty says, and don't forget the good old Rock and Roll Express. Yeah, the Rock and Roll Express, I hope we never see them again on NWA Power. I think that those guys, although, you can't take away the rich history and tradition that they brought to the NWA from the 1986 till now. But let's be 100% honest about things, guys. Most of you weren't even alive when they won their first tag titles. Hell, some of you weren't alive when they won their second to last tag titles. And honestly, they're so old. And not that old guys can't wrestle, but I mean, they're in their 60s. That's just, I don't know. You have to be able to suspend reality. Are you telling me that 2 guys in their 60s are really going to be able to put Jack Stane down? They're going to beat up Tom Latimer? That's a hard pill for me to swallow. Let's see. Lamb says, to be fair, the NWA dropped the ball with the Dawsons early. No nonsense booking back then, looking back. Sure. I mean, I get that. Now, Stan just blows my thought process out of the water because he wants to see a tag team of Tim Storm and Dan Severn as the NWA World Tag Team Champions. I just heard recently that Dan Severn spent most of his career without an ACL in his left knee and a partially torn one in his right knee. I don't know if he's the right guy that should be carrying your brand going forward. I mean, let's face it, he was an amazing competitor. I mean, what he was able to do, nobody else could do today. I'm sorry, Nick Aldis could not step in the octagon and wrestle a full-time schedule. There's nobody out there. Not even Brock Lesnar can do that. What Dan Severn did was very unique, was very special, was damn right magical. But there's no one else that could do what he did. But he's also approaching 60 and has 2 bad knees. I'd like to leave my memories of him the way they were, as him being just a very dominant wrestler and a very capable wrestler. Jason says the fun fact, the reason why Scott Dawson of the Revival chose the name Dawsons was out of the respect for the Dawsons. Okay. I don't know if I believe that, but I'll go with it. Terry says, I was alive when they won the tag titles, but I'm 59. See, I mean, there you go, guys. And Terry, I'm not trying to put you down, but that demonstrates what I'm trying to say. You were a young man when they won the tag titles. I'm just saying. DKM says 50-50 booking screwed the tag teams. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that screwed the tag team style of wrestling. It all starts with really what they did in WWE. Throwing just random dudes together, breaking up tag teams when it became interesting storyline. The fact of the matter is there are very few promotions out there that can do tag team wrestling right. The NWA has opportunity because they don't have to adhere to they're not worried about ratings. They're not on regular TV, and they have the formulaic process that if they lock these guys up, guys like War Kings, guys like The End, some variant of Strictly Business, and perhaps maybe 2 or 3 more tag teams that are out there, that they could potentially do something very fun and interesting. Of course, that means you have to get the belts off of J.R. Kratos and Aaron Stevens, but that's another story. Sean Mega says the Dawsons never got over. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because that crowd in Atlanta didn't hate him. I was there. They cheered and booed them just like everyone else did. And no matter what they did with them, they still seemed to be having a good time while they were there. So, but obviously they weren't meant for long because they didn't stay with them. They left the NWA before NWA went on its hiatus. And then Jason Fiat says it's true. Jason Fight, says it's true. He said it in an interview. Hey, Jason, I'll take your word for it, brother. I mean, I don't know. I didn't hear it. It just sounds pretty comical. But I'm all for it. Lamb says, it's like WWE booking in the tag division. Just throw some guys together and have them carry the division with less TV time as possible. I mean, that's one way to do it. Personally, I would like to see more regular tag teams. Some of the things that Impact Wrestling did, I thought was really good. Like they brought in the North and really let them dominate that division until it got better. And then you had teams like Reno Scum, and you had tag teams like Sabin, the Motor City Machine Guns, Sabin and I can't remember his name right now, but the Motor City Machine Guns. They were establishing these really good tag teams, and I feel like the NWA could similarly do like the same thing. We have the War Kings, right? We have the End. Hopefully these are long-term signings and not just these tapings. Hopefully these guys are here for a while. Alex Shelley, thanks guys. And I think as you bring more tag teams to the show, I mean, it can really be something special and unique. The whole thing with having Nick Aldis on every episode, we don't need that. And I'm not trying to say that anything negative about Nick Aldis. He's the world's heavyweight champion. He is the special attraction. He doesn't need to be on every episode of Power. In fact, it would probably be more meaningful if he wasn't. If he was only reserved for pay-per-views, or when a guy wins an opportunity to wrestle Aldis. And that would actually give him more time if he's really working behind the scenes to actually do some more work behind the scenes. And allow the roster to grow. DKM mentioned the Koloff dynasty. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know they're still together. Are they a part of the NWA? That remains to be seen. There's also Hawk Ari, which was Luke Hawk and PJ Hawk, his son. That was a decent tag team too. Both of those guys, bring them onto the roster and allow these tag teams to actually build and formulate and have these angles. And I think you really would see a lot of cool stuff. More of your comments. I saw someone mention Lariato Pro. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of would like some of the guys from Lariato Pro to come work over. I mean, what's stopping Carl the Machine Gun Anderson and Luke Gallows showing up in the NWA if they're able to work in AEW? Okay. Terry McDermott says, at 59, he would not even want to ref a match with Jack Sane. If he just pushed me, I'd be done. Terry, Jack Sane is a big man. He's also a very kind man, but yeah, in that ring, anything could happen. Sean Mega said, Paro is signed to MLW as well. Why not share talent? See, Sean, I'm not even against that as well, but I don't know if he's still under contract with MLW. I don't know that the NWA would be using him if he was under contract. Jimmy said, what's up to Fiona? Jimmy said, what's up to Terry? Heeb says they've been working in Lariato Pro. I think he meant the Koloff Dynasty. That's good to hear. And then WWLTD, which for those of you who don't know, that is What Would Luthez Do? What would Luthez do? Asks, have the War Kings been inactive? On the previous episodes of Power, Crimson was injured. Of course, as Crimson was coming off of his injury, we got hit with this global pandemic. So no, the War Kings have actually still been working in promotions like Tried and True Pro Wrestling, Ohio Valley Wrestling, Southwestern Wrestling Entertainment, also known as SWE Fury. They've been working there as well. They finally are both healthy and the NWA is running again, and I think they just wanted to give it a little bit of time to breathe before they brought him in as a tag team. Although, in my instincts, if I was the guy running the show, I would have put them on the first pay-per-view back because they were established at the 70th anniversary show. They were part of the Crockett Cup. You didn't really need to reintroduce us to a tag team we were firmly aware of. Championship Wrestling from Memphis. Oh, Lamb says Championship Wrestling from Memphis has a better tag division without tag titles. Ouch. Ouch. Terry McDermott says, bringing the tribe from Arizona. Now, I know Hawaiian Lion and I know the Navajo Warrior, and both of them, although wrestling will always be a very important part of their lives, I know that they're more part-time wrestlers now, and that might actually work to the NWA's advantage because they'd only really have to miss a few days of their everyday lives for wrestling. But I know that Hawaiian Lion recently took a job working with the law enforcement in Arizona, so I don't know that he has the availability, the opportunity to fly down to Atlanta to wrestle. But yeah, I mean, they're both older guys. They're not young. I mean, I was talking about Nathan Jones when this show started. Those guys shared a ring with Nathan Jones in 01 and UPW. So I as much as I like the tribe and I think they're really, really good, I don't think that they quite fit in with the NWA in terms of the availability. Now, I think if they can make it work, they'd be fun as an enhancement tag team. But, you know, even then, those guys are really bad dudes, and I don't think they want to be put in a position where they're just enhancement talent, right? With that being said, like, you know, there's a lot of good tag teams that were in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, specifically the Wolf Zaddies. And I think the Wolf Zaddies would have fit in perfectly with the NWA, especially because they're younger. They have heavyweight style builds. I'm not going to call them heavyweights, but, you know, they're more than junior heavyweights for certain. And, you know, if you guys remember a few years back, Bad Dude Tito had a really good match with Nick Aldis. I think both of those guys would be very, very good. Yeah, Jimmy from the LB, I mentioned how Nathan Jones in UPW had formally challenged for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship twice back in the early 2000s, and in fact, he's going to be in the next Mortal Kombat movie. That's why his name came up so much today. Wolf Zaddies is kind of semi-active. Bad Dude Tito is active, but Che Cabrera is, kind of semi-active now. I think the problem with that is the pandemic, Lamb. I think there hasn't been a lot of good opportunities for talents, especially in Southern California. I mean, you look at this NWA roster, and a lot of these guys have come from Southern California. Adonis is Californian. Stevens is from currently lives in California. Slice Boogie is from California. Jordan Clearwater currently lives in California. There's not a lot of wrestling happening in this state. Some shows are starting to come back now as this lockdown from the pandemic is slowly starting to expire. But I think that's why you didn't see a lot of Che Cabrera wrestling, because there just hasn't been a lot of opportunities for Che Cabrera to be wrestling. And let's not forget a guy like Eric Watts, who made his kind of formal introduction to the NWA audience when he was wrestling against Eli Drake, now known as LA Knight. And he also teamed up with the Pope, and the two of them took on Zicky Dice and Effie in another NWA sanctioned match for Primetime Live. And Dave Scooby mentions 4 minutes of heat. I mean, half the roster in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is more than willing to come to the NWA. You know, when we talk about the Bodega, you know, Danny Limelight is kind of busy working with AEW and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and going around the world. But Papo Esco has said more than once that he would love to come to the NWA. And you could put Papo Esco in a tag team with Slice Boogie, and they could be some sort of variant of the Bodega in the NWA. You could also bring in 4 minutes of heat, like you guys mentioned. Levi Shapiro is another guy that would love to have an opportunity to wrestle in the NWA. So there's a ton of talent from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, but it has to make sense. And I'll be honest, I don't necessarily want everyone from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood to show up in the NWA, because now it dilutes everything. One thing that makes the NWA really special is it's very unique. Its roster is very unique. Hey, Vamps Lives is following us. Thanks for checking us out, Vamps. I appreciate that. I wouldn't want the NWA's roster to be flooded with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, because then it wouldn't be very, it would be too much of the same. I think Lamb is saying something similar to that right now. Yes, he did. He said, but wouldn't it be weird if the NWA uses half of the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood roster and not building stars from outside of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood? You cut David Marquez off and then you use his talents. That would be a bad showing. It would be, but it would still be very interesting. I mean, look, that's the problem with independent wrestling, and it's also one of the best things about independent wrestling is everybody has opportunity. If you're not locked into a contract, you're free to work wherever you want. And I know Dave Marquez wouldn't hold anybody back. There's not a single person on his roster he would prevent the NWA from using. But it just, it has to make sense. All of it has to make sense. Terry McDermott says Eric Redbeard and Tim Storm would be an interesting combination. If you're going to bring in Eric Redbeard, I hope you would just let him be himself. Again, one of the things that I really loved about Paro 2 weeks ago is when he came into the NWA, we didn't know if he was going to be a singles or a tag team competitor, and look at how dominant he was against Jordan Clearwater. I think there is room for a guy like that who could just come in and be dominant and either be dominating towards the television title or dominating towards the national title or even dominating towards the world title. I think that would be okay. If you're going to use a guy like Eric Redbeard, I think I'd rather just see him fly solo. Stan says, to add to my previous thought, if the former NWA World Heavyweight Champs Severn and Storm would have a team for a short NWA tag title reign after they lose the belt, it could set up a match between the two. Yeah, man. I mean, look, that sounds fine. I don't know that Severn is actively wrestling anymore. We don't know how much more gas is in the tank for Tim Storm. Hopefully, I want to see Tim Storm with one more world title run, to be honest. I think if we're going to put Tim Storm back in the ring, I mean, I want to see him challenging for that 10 pounds of gold. Let's see. Doty says he doesn't need to have another title reign, but I want to see Dan Severn in the NWA ring again, even challenging the world title he never lost. I mean, he did lose. I guess you're right. No, you're right. He didn't lose the last title. You were correct. Let's see. Stan says, Doty, I've been trying to get Nick Aldis and the NWA matchmakers to book a match between Aldis and Severn. I mean, look, if they're trying to get a match, let's be honest, they're trying to book a match with Muta. Well, let me rephrase that. The fans would like to see a match with Muta and Nick Aldis. So I don't see why a match with Dan Severn versus Nick Aldis would be that much different. It's just that these guys are getting older. It is their mobility in the ring is not as good as it was, and wrestling has changed a lot since Lou Thez. But with that being said, I wouldn't mind. I'd watch that match. Stan says Severn and Storm wrestled each other for the NWA title back in the 90s. Severn was stripped of the title for honoring previous commitments. You're correct. Severn did defend the title against Storm, and I believe that was in 97 or 98 at WLW, which, oddly enough, Dave Marquez booked that match. And that was back when Tim Storm had the handlebar mustache and the ponytail, and he dyed his hair black. I would like to see that Tim Storm return. Jimmy from the LB says, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood has such short and young wrestlers right now, though it seems Beef Candy are great on the mic, but I think we agree, Jay, that they're a bit small in stature for the NWA. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Oh, hey, that's Gary Horn is in the house. If you guys don't know, Gary Horn and his buddies, Hey, It's Will Daly and Dr. Robert Stinson do the post show, the official post show. We're the unofficial pre-show. They do the official post show, and Gary Horn says thoughts on Cardona challenging, and then Aldis saying lots of guys want a shot. There's path to the title, and they're on the NWA Power. Gary, I think somebody like Cardona could pop the show. And I don't understand why they don't reach out to guys like him. And I'm sure it's a war of words, and I'm sure these guys are talking behind the scenes, but bringing him on to Power would pop the fan base. And I think yeah, I don't want guys just to show up to get pay-per-view matches. I do want to see them put in some work. It was very off-putting to me to have Marty Scurll challenge Aldis, but then only see Brody King and Flip Gordon make appearances on Power. I want to see these guys show up on Power. So if you're going to bring a guy like Matt Cordova to the NWA, I don't want him to be on a pay-per-view debut match. I want to see him come in and work the ranks, because there are good guys on this roster. And we've been talking about the last few weeks about Pope. Someone brought to the attention last week that maybe with losing the title, that now Trevor Murdoch might be leveraged in an opportunity where he can challenge the 10 pounds of gold. I mean, he's proven his worth. So again, I don't want Matt Cordova just to show up and get a title shot. I want him to put in the work. So I agree with Aldis on that one, and we hardly agree on anything. More of the comments. If they can move better than Tyrus, bring Dave Scooby calling it like he sees it. Tyrus is bad, man. And I don't mean that in a good way. Terry McDermott says, Severn took some beatings in the UFC. He may not want to get in the ring again. I mean, he had an in-ring career that lasted over like 20 years, guys. I mean, he was wrestling before 1995. He was doing wrestling matches like early as 92. Al Snow trained him for in-ring wrestling competition. And I mean, he wrestled in Southern California. He wrestled at the World Peace Festival with Antonio Inoki. He did time in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He did time in the WWE. Again, Wrestling 01. Wrestled all over Japan. Wrestled all over the United States. Dennis Corluzzo, Ken Taylor. He was wrestling all those promotions. It's not like he got shorted his time. I mean, he had a reign from 1995 till 1999 when they finally took the belt off of him. So he had a good run. I'm not gonna cry that Dan Severn didn't have a good time. He represented the NWA when they needed somebody desperately. He was a great representation of the NWA. Not taking anything away from the man, but he's also pushing 60, and I don't know how much he still has left in the tank. And one thing I don't want to see is these matches with talents like Dory Funk Jr., who, yeah, the man is a legend. But, I mean, he was even wrestling matches up until like 3 or 4 years ago in All Japan. And it's just, those get hard to watch. For me personally. But, to each his own, of course. What would Luthez said? Can we leave the legends to meet and greets? NWA is starting to look like an over 60 softball league. I mean, look. I'm not saying that this roster has to be young by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, I want Tim Storm to get one more run, and we know he's in his mid-50s. Tyrus is pushing 50, and he looks every bit of it. There's not a lot of young guys on the roster. I think the youngest guy on the roster right now is Slice Boogie, and next to him is probably Jordan Clearwater. There's not a lot of young guns. There doesn't have to be a lot of young guns. There's a lot of guys who are in really close to my age bracket, that 35 to 42 bracket, and that's all I want is guys at DKM just said they need a healthy mix. That's what I want. Not everyone has to be old, not everyone has to be young, but if we can find some sort of common ground, that's what I would like to see. Oh, Heeb says Sky Blue is 21. I don't know if she's technically on the roster or if she was just part of the showcase. Gary Horn points out Mims, Clearwater, Boogie, The End are all pretty young. Yeah. Heaves was preparing the roster, or peeping the roster of a Chicago indie Corgan ran, and a guy like Acid Jazz could be a nice fit. You know who's someone who hasn't showed up from that indie promotion, who I can't wrap my head why, is Jay Bradley. Carrying that boomstick, he was the, the best heavyweight there was, pound for pound or something like that. I would love to see Jay Bradley come back. He had a few matches for the NWA, but they've never really used him as anything important. So, yeah, that'd be interesting, too. Dodie says, well, unless they somehow can get Minoru Suzuki, he still kicks ass even in the old age. But not everyone is Minoru Suzuki, though, either. Doty. I mean, that's rare. Lance is the best heavyweight in the world. There you go. Yeah, but see, if Jay Bradley was a part of OVW, I mean, at one point so was Jack Stane. I think he still is. So being able to come and go, I mean, you're right. We don't know contracts, so I don't know if he has that ability, or even maybe he doesn't want to. I mean, maybe he's very content just working Ohio Valley. But the long and short of it is these guys can really do anything that they want to. And speaking of doing anything that you want to, you could order an alliance-wrestling.com hat or our t-shirts by visiting our merch store. And you can find that at alliance-wrestling.com. And that's where we also post all of our news and information, including the article that I wrote about the national title. Did you know that the national title has a disputed entry point? Some people believe the first national champion for the NWA was Jack Briscoe. And some people believe the first national champion was Austin Idol. Who do you believe? I don't know. Did you know that the national title was once just the Georgia Heavyweight Championship? It wasn't until 1997 that became a board-controlled title, and that actually the history of the national title is tied to the WWE US Championship. If you read my article, you'll know that. Also, we put up all of our content there. Gary Horn said Jack Vino passed away today. Not sure if I saw that. Yeah, I did see that. It was... I didn't actually talk about it. His feuds with Flair back in the 80s were, some of the most bloody, gory feuds that the NWA had in Puerto Rico. And I really felt like, politics aside, a talent like Jack Vino was very beloved in his home country. And, it's always sad when someone passes away. But nevertheless, that's just kind of how things go sometimes. I see you guys are still talking about Severin. Look, I love the guy too, but I think he's on his... I don't think he's going to be actively wrestling anytime soon. DKM just mentioned it. He was stripped because the TNA wanted to crown their own champion, which again I thought was a fool's move back then, because they ended up putting the title on Shamrock. And I think what better way to have gotten people talking about your new wrestling promotion is if you could put Dan the Beast Severn against Ken Shamrock, the match that never really happened in the WWE, not the way that anyone wanted it to, and put that on Impact, put that on TNA, your first pay-per-view. It would have definitely got people talking about it, could have really solidified that NWA World Championship. Of course, that just never happened. I'll just read more of your comments, Dan. Fiona got sucked on a phone call. Missed so much. Hey, Fiona, you know what the cool thing about this is? You can watch this anytime you want. You can watch it. I know after this show, Gary and company do This Is Pro Wrestling. They do This Is the NWA podcast on NWA's YouTube channel. If you guys enjoy this show, I think you might enjoy their show. And we're just a few minutes away from the NWA actually doing their third episode of NWA Power. So why don't you guys go grab yourself a bathroom break and a soda pop or a whiskey, Gary, and check out what's coming next for the NWA. I'll be sitting here watching it too. Appreciate you guys checking us out every week. You can follow us on all social medias at The Alliance Blog. That's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr. You're watching us on YouTube. You could also watch us on Twitch. And you could hear the podcast at The Alliance Blog either on Amazon, Apple, or Spotify. Again, guys, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you checking us out. It's always a blast having you guys here. And until next time, we're going to see you guys at the matches. Let's go enjoy the NWA.